The midday sun across the Simpson Desert does not merely warm the earth. It aggressively bakes it, turning the red sand into a sprawling anvil of lethal heat. Surface temperatures frequently soar past 140 degrees Fahrenheit, evaporating any trace of atmospheric moisture before it can even register as a shadow on the dunes. In this hyper-arid wasteland, the most fundamental rule of biology seems to be violently suspended. Water is the universal solvent of life, and without it, cellular functions collapse, proteins denature, and life rapidly extinguishes. Yet, the shifting sands are not empty. Amidst this searing desolation, a hidden empire of resilient organisms thrives without ever visiting a watering hole. They exist in a state of perpetual drought, defying the biological mandate that demands regular liquid intake. For these desert masters, survival is not about embarking on desperate migrations to find an oasis, but rather becoming one. Evolution has engineered them to harvest moisture from the invisible margins of the atmosphere and to synthesize hydration entirely from dust-dry food. Deep within the Australian deserts, one of the most bizarre and heavily armored reptiles on Earth navigates the scorching spinifex grass. The Thorny Devil is a slow-moving, ant-eating lizard covered entirely in conical, rigid spikes that give it the appearance of a miniature walking dragon. At first glance, this intimidating exterior appears solely dedicated to defense against the region's hungry predators. But this spiky armor serves a secondary purpose that is far more vital to its existence. Its entire body is a highly complex, living water collection system. The secret lies in a physical mechanism known as capillary action, which is the ability of a liquid to flow in narrow spaces without the assistance of, or even in opposition to, external forces like gravity. The Thorny Devil's skin is deeply fissured with a network of microscopic grooves that run between its menacing spikes. When the frigid desert night causes the temperature to plummet, dew collection begins. As condensation forms on the lizard's cold body, these microscopic channels immediately capture the tiny droplets. Scientists observing this creature in its natural habitat noted an astonishing behavior that initially seemed completely counterintuitive to desert survival. A thorny devil will confidently stand in a shallow, ephemeral puddle or press its belly deeply into damp sand, remaining perfectly still for extended periods. Through careful observation and high-resolution imaging, researchers discovered that the lizard is actually drinking through its feet and stomach. The microscopic grooves act like a powerful sponge, drawing moisture upward across the creature's back against the force of gravity, channeling it directly into the corners of its mouth. The lizard literally swallows the moisture harvested by its own armor. By simply existing in the shifting microclimates of the dunes, it extracts the faint whispers of humidity left behind by the night. This passive collection system is a masterpiece of evolutionary design, allowing the creature to thrive in an environment where a single miscalculation in energy expenditure means death. It never needs to seek out standing water, a resource that is virtually non-existent in its harsh territory anyway. This extreme biological engineering does not exist in isolation. It shapes the entire food web of the Australian outback. Because the Thorny Devil is so efficient at hoarding and internalizing water, it inadvertently becomes a vital, mobile reservoir for the ecosystem. Predators capable of breaching its spiky defenses do not just gain a meal. They secure a critical dose of hydration. The lizard's survival strategy is woven into the broader tapestry of life and death in the dunes, proving that in the desert, water is the ultimate currency. Half a world away, a completely different evolutionary pathway has conquered an equally punishing landscape. The vast North American deserts, including the sprawling expanses of the Mojave and the Sonoran, present a terrain of cracked earth and sparse, brittle vegetation. Here, the environmental pressure takes a different form. The challenge is not just capturing external moisture from dew, but surviving on a diet that is almost entirely devoid of liquid. In this scorched theater, the relentless sun dictates a strict nocturnal schedule for most mammals. But simply avoiding the daylight heat does not solve the fundamental problem of dehydration. The seeds scattered across the desert floor by resilient shrubs are baked dry, containing less than 5% water by weight. For a typical mammal, processing such dry forage would require more bodily water for digestion than the food itself provides, leading to a rapid and fatal desiccation. Bounding across these moonlit sands is the kangaroo rat, a small, bipedal rodent that navigates the terrain with astonishing agility. Despite its mammalian biology, which typically demands constant and significant hydration, this creature possesses a physiological superpower that defies logic. A kangaroo rat can live its entire life, spanning several years in the wild, without ever drinking a single drop of liquid water. Instead of seeking out puddles or relying on morning dew, the kangaroo rat manufactures its own hydration through a brilliant biochemical process that yields metabolic water. This is water created internally inside a living organism through its own metabolic functions. When the rat digests its daily diet of seemingly lifeless, desiccated seeds, its cellular machinery goes to work breaking down the complex carbohydrates. At the microscopic level, this biochemistry is a marvel of thermodynamic efficiency. The oxygen the rat breathes from the dry desert air combines directly with the hydrogen atoms stripped from the dry carbohydrates during digestion. This chemical reaction produces the necessary energy to fuel the animal, carbon dioxide to be exhaled, and crucial, life-sustaining molecules of pure water. The kangaroo rat literally breathes and eats its own water supply into existence, transforming dry matter into liquid survival. But producing metabolic water is only half the battle. Retaining that precious liquid requires an extreme physiological lockdown. The kangaroo rat loses almost no moisture to the dry desert air, thanks to nasal passages that are highly specialized. These passages act as a complex biological heat exchange system. When the rodent exhales, the air cools rapidly inside its snout, causing the moisture in its breath to condense back onto the nasal membranes before it can escape into the arid atmosphere. The most dramatic conservation effort, however, occurs deep within the animal's internal anatomy. The microscopic structures responsible for filtering blood and producing urine, known to biologists as the loops of Henle, are extraordinarily elongated in the kangaroo rat. This extended filtration system allows the rodent to extract almost every usable molecule of water from its waste before it is expelled. This extreme anatomical specialization means the animal produces urine that is up to 5 times more concentrated than that of a human, and its solid waste is practically devoid of moisture. The evolutionary arms race in these hyper-arid zones has pushed biological efficiency to its absolute limits. Every breath, every bite, and every internal biological process is optimized for a singular, uncompromising goal: the absolute retention of internal moisture. The geology of the North American deserts plays a crucial, silent role in dictating these evolutionary extremes. Desert sand is a notoriously terrible conductor of heat. This means that while the surface boils at midday, temperatures just a few feet underground remain remarkably stable and cool. The kangaroo rat exploits this geological thermal barrier by excavating extensive, multi-chambered burrows deep into the earth. Within these subterranean fortresses, the rat meticulously caches its dry seeds. The slight humidity generated by the sleeping animal's breath is slowly absorbed by the stored seeds, subtly increasing their water content before they are even eaten. The rodent has effectively engineered its own microenvironment, leveraging the insulating properties of the earth to maximize its metabolic efficiency and stretch its internally generated water supply even further. It is a masterclass in behavioral adaptation, turning the very geology of the desert into a tool for hydration. The sheer perfection of these survival strategies stands in stark contrast to the historical struggles of human exploration in these very same landscapes. Early pioneers and explorers venturing into the hyper-arid zones of the Australian outback and the American Southwest quickly discovered the terrifying fragility of the human body. Expedition logs from the 19th century describe the agonizing descent into dehydration, a process where the blood thickens and the mind unravels under the relentless sun. Carrying heavy wooden canteens and relying on fragile, easily disrupted supply lines, they were entirely dependent on external water sources. When those supplies ran out, the human body, which loses vast amounts of moisture simply through sweating to maintain its core temperature, rapidly succumbed to the hostile environment. We are creatures intrinsically tied to the presence of external water, forced to drag our life support systems with us into the void. The Thorny Devil and the Kangaroo Rat, however, have internalized the oasis. They have transformed their very anatomy into self-sustaining reservoirs, perfectly adapted to a world that wants them dry. Today, the bizarre and brilliant adaptations of these desert dwellers are inspiring cutting-edge human engineering. The study of biological systems to solve complex human design challenges is looking closely at the survival mechanisms of these animals. Engineers are currently developing synthetic materials that mimic the capillary action of the lizard's skin, hoping to create passive water collection systems that can draw moisture directly from thin air to aid human survival in drought-stricken regions across the globe. The microscopic grooves of a desert reptile and the elongated kidney tubules of a bounding rodent stand as profound testaments to life's absolute refusal to surrender. In the harshest, driest corners of the globe, biology does not merely endure the punishment, it innovates and conquers. The lethal heat and crushing aridity of the desert are not an end to life, but a formidable crucible, forcing survival to take on its most extraordinary, resilient, and awe-inspiring forms.